Hello everybody! It's time to do a video that I rarely ever do. It's on sports, and the only sports I watch is the NBA, so basketball. And of course, my hometown team is the Trailblazers. So let's start with the last two games versus the Mavs, because those were obviously pivotal and huge for us. Those games were actually, I would argue, almost equally as important for the Mavs as it was for us as a team. And obviously, I think to anybody who pays even the slightest bit of attention, I consider myself a casual fan. I don't consider myself a diehard NBA fan by any means. Again, even somebody in the circumstances like I am, I think it's pretty obvious and clear that the Mavs, these games were so important for them. For the Mavs, they're trying to prove themselves to the league, really, and their opponents and the media. That's their main thing. They're trying to prove themselves worthy of getting there, and Luka's trying to do so and to prove himself that not only does he need help, obviously, but at the same time that he, in a way, can technically lead and carry a mediocre team deep. Kind of like LeBron James did back in the day with the Cavs. Whereas for us, it was more trying to prove it to ourselves what it is that we're capable of, what we know we're capable of, but for some reason have just been absolutely atrocious at before these last two games versus the Mavs in majority, alongside obviously our fan base. That's the other big piece that we were trying to do. So we had different proving points, obviously, that both teams are trying to prove. Plus, we are in contention with the Mavs and two other teams for the same damn 8th seed, which is just crazy to think about. There's 13 teams, 13 together in a 15-team conference, mind you. We all know that, but let me just reiterate. There's 15 teams for a conference, and there's 13 of the 15 teams in the West that are all within 10 games of the first seed. That is the worst seed, the 13th, OKC Thunder, are literally only 10 games behind the first seeded Denver Nuggets right now. Halfway through the season. We're halfway through the season. And they're only 10 games back from the first seed. These last two games are pivotal, but obviously I would argue it was more pivotal and imperative for us to win and to prove ourselves as a team than the Mavs. And the main reason why is because we have a much better roster overall, at least in the starting line, than obviously the Dallas Mavericks do. The Dallas Mavericks have Luka, maybe Christian Wood, if Jason Kidd starts actually consistently starting him, which he fucking has proven himself and deserves, he fucking needs and requires, and the team does better when he's starting. So, all season so far, so you would think he'd start him, but for some reason he's still like, he has to earn it. The guy's coming off the bench averaging 16 to 18 points, give or take, a game off the bench, and plus 50% from the field, plus 40% from three. He's still averaging like a block a game, and you're still gonna sit here and say he has to earn it in order to come off the bench, in order to get a starting spot. Jason is a weird coach. Those are really the only one, if not maybe iffy, you could debate it, two players that the Dallas Mavericks have that are actually, you know, proper starter quality. Or, in obviously Luka's case, it's Luka Magic, so he's unfair, is what he is. Kind of like Kyrie, I feel like, on offense. And yeah, you have a okay supporting cast in Spencer Dinwiddie, who is very streaky, and obviously Timmy Hardaway is egregiously streaky. He's one of the streakiest fucking shooters I've ever seen in league history. And there's a lot to contend with, so it's kind of crazy he could be that high up, but he is agonizing to watch sometimes because he is so unpredictable game to game. But then again, so is CJ McCollum, which I'm glad he's gone. Nevertheless, these two games have meant a lot, especially considering, brings us to my next topic, the struggles we've had. We went 2-8 in our last 10 before these Mavs games, and we had dropped our last 5 in a row before then. Our struggles have been absolutely painful and agonizing, I tell you. It is truly a pain in the ass to be a Blazers fan, and here's why. This is a consistent theme. Even if you look back literally ever since our championship season, even the highest of highs have been the same for the last 40 years of Blazers basketball. It's been exactly the same no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter what our roster has been. It doesn't matter how our starting line has been. It doesn't matter our coaching staff, our ownership, anything. This team has been terrible consistently. And I say terrible because it's mediocrity. And a lot of people have gotten mad at me over the last few seasons, especially non-Blazer fans, saying, well, you keep consistently getting into the playoffs, so you can't say you're mediocre. I can. That's why I called it playoff mediocrity. Whenever we make it to the playoffs, it's like, okay, but we're still mediocre in the playoffs. We're still a mediocre team. A mediocre playoffs team. Like, sure, we make it every year. Maybe we somehow get lucky and squeeze ourselves into a second round. But we got that one Western Conference Finals run, which we should never have gotten to the Western Conference Finals. I'll be the first person to admit that, even if everyone was healthy, including Nurk, because he was out. Obviously, Ennis was taking over that season. We should never have made it to the Western Conference Finals. We did not deserve to be in the Western Conference Finals, period. End of story, full stop. I will die on that hill. As a Blazers fan, we didn't deserve a Western Conference Finals contention, let alone spot. It just simply should not have happened. I don't know what the fuck happened with those other teams we played, but that should never have happened. But if you look at the consistency throughout those years, it's almost exclusively, especially the last 10, it's been exclusively first and second round exits out of the playoffs every single year. It is absolutely mediocrity. Because what it is and why it's so painful, is we're just always doing just good enough to get into the playoffs. It seems like that's all that Paul Allen cared about. That's all that Jody cares about, even though she's clearly clueless as to sports and business. And that's all that thus our coaching staff seems to care about, is just good enough to get to the playoffs. Just good enough to collect paychecks, and that's it. Like, that's all this team ever cares about. So, as a result, in reality, we suck. And it sucks to be a Blazers fan because of that. Because you do not want to see the same shit happen over and over and over and over and over again. And your team constantly smash its head against the same spot in the same brick wall every single season for 10 plus years of the same shit. It's agonizing. And to see us do this slide, I knew it was inevitable. I actually didn't think that Jerami Grant was good enough to get us over the hump. I thought we'd return back to where we were at our peak and maybe get into a second round and then get kicked at best with Jerami Grant. But I was so confident that wouldn't happen and how little it would help this team that I figured we'd end with somewhere between 45 and 48 wins on the season. And my final guess, and it's somewhere stored on my computer, I have a screenshot of my guess. In fact, multiple places I did it. So I could have it for the record, because I did it like a week later. And this was before even training camp started. I took a guess and I said, we're gonna end up with 45 wins in the year. I'm gonna stick with that as my guess. 45 wins total. That's the best we're gonna do this year. I'm locking it in. That's my guess. By the end of the season, you will see us win 45 wins. Do I still feel that way? Yes. Do I hope that these people, this team of ours, will kick me in the fucking teeth and curb stomp me to death for it and absolutely destroy me, and by the end of this season we have such an elite level second half of the year that we end with, like, say 60 wins? I would love nothing more than that. Although if we end up with 60 wins at our current record, well, we'd have to win every single game, I think, for the rest of the year. So now that I think about it, it's possible, but damn near impossible. So as a result, obviously it's not going to happen. But I would like to see us get, 50 wins. That would be great, because that would exceed my expectations for this team. That brings me to my next topic, and that is our starters. I just want to give a good overview of the real reality of what our starters are like. Damian, we all know. So it's his 10th season this year. He's been here for 10 straight years in Portland. Not good defensively. He's not atrocious like Anthony Simons, or CJ McCollum, obviously. Those are league worst defenders alongside of people like Trae Young. They're absolutely abhorrent defensively. He's not a net positive defender at all. I wish I could say otherwise. He's not. He's just a one-trick pony. He's all about offense. That's all he can do. But he is an elite level one-trick pony. He is an elite scorer when he's on. This season, he has struggled off and on a lot. I mean, he has been woefully streaky. He has been so up and down. He looks like an OSHA condemned roller coaster this season, I feel like. He's gone from absolute highs at the start of the season, like so many people have said, is that MVP Dame. I wouldn't have ever given him MVP even at the start of the season. That just is so stupid. But, you know, MVP Dame was a thing. It was a real thing that the media, fans, including of other teams, even those that hate this team, were really saying, especially with a 10-4 start, even though I knew he had to come back down to earth. And that was a real thing because he was at the highest of highs for his career at the start of the year. Then he went out with another injury. Then he came back for a little bit. Still wasn't very good. Tweaked another injury. Went back out for a little bit. Then he came back now. And at the start of this, well, it was during that whole streak. We couldn't win a fucking game. We couldn't hit a fucking shot. And nor could Dame or Ant. It was terrible. And now he's finally caught fire the last, well, 2 games versus the Mavs. He's absolutely been on. In fact, I think the game before that, he was really hot. So that's great to see him back on track. Hopefully he can sustain that. That said, we move on to the next one, and I've already alluded to my overall thoughts of Ant, but Ant is absolutely CJ McCollum advanced. He's like the next generation of CJ. He is a more athletic version of CJ, a little more chaotic version of CJ, but he's still CJ. That's what he is. CJ's almost like a CJ McCollum light, if it makes any sense to Ant. It's so weird to say, but it's true. Yes, I get that Ant is young, but look at the track record of this team, especially again over the last 10 seasons. Especially when it comes down to these kind of players. What do we do? What is it our team and our trainers do? What do they focus on having them train on? Offense. Why? Well, they're already great offensive players. You might as well train their offense more. Okay, great. Why doesn't our team ever emphasize defense for non-defenders? Like Dame, like CJ, like Ant. Especially when, in this case for Ant, he's so young. He has so much potential. Wouldn't you think it would make more sense to have him focus aggressively and super emphatically on, if not near exclusively, on his defense first? And then once you finally get him to be a consistent and at least decent quality, but emphasis on consistent defender, then you can have him even out the field again. Maybe 50-50 until his defense still progresses further. And then once that happens, maybe it's near or on par with his offense, then get him back to his offense. Because clearly he loves his offense. He's very focused on offense. He's an offensive guard. It'd be great to establish the defense, especially when they're that young first, as a team. Emphasize them doing that, becoming a two-way all-around player that's consistent on that end. Thus then doing the offense, but doing that with consistency. Because Ant is super fucking streaky, just like CJ McCollum. And the thing is that you could say, oh, well, that's because of the fact that he's such a good offender that all the team's defenses go after him. Okay, but they also go after Dame and Jerami. And now even Nurk is getting double teamed. We have 3 high-level offensive players and a 4th offensive option that's good enough that you actually legitimately, as a defense, have to prioritize which one you're going to trap, which one you're going to double or triple team, which one you're going to defend, what you'd rather give up and who you'd rather give it up to. That's how good of an offensive front line we have. Front line being, again, starters. Our starters are really good offensively. Jeremiah's having career year offensively. Josh Hart has struggled this year, but in the last game, somebody seemed to have gotten to him, lit a fire in him and said, fuck you, Josh, shoot the fucking ball. Because Josh finally started shooting last game, and he actually found his shot pretty quickly. That's hugely important because Josh Hart last year, when he came to us, he, even alongside of Ant, he absolutely carried this team. The motherfucker had 44, I think it was, points for us, or 46 or something like that last year. He absolutely carried our offense. And he started all his games, or not started, but he played in all his games with good minutes for New Orleans. He comes here, plays like 30 games, and his scoring average went from 13 or so points a game to 19 plus points a game in 30 games. The dude, and he was efficient as fuck too, including from three. People are like, oh, he's not a great three-point shooter. He is, if he actually shoots with that aggression and confidence. That demand of himself of like, I'm going to fucking hit my fucking shots. I'm going to be that guy when I want to be and need to be, but especially when I want to be, I'm going to be a fucking scorer. That guy is an absolute two-way. I've always loved Josh Hart's game. He is such a quality elite level two-way player, and he is such a great energy guy. He is exactly the kind of guy I would say you'd want to build your rotations around. I'm not saying you want to build your roster necessarily around that, but you definitely need, every team needs a Josh Hart on their team, that style of player, that kind of guy, that kind of mentality, that kind of fire. They need that. But we've needed that fire to be ignited inside of Josh all this season, because he's suddenly gone and regressed back to like his Laker days where he's kind of like hesitant to shoot and he doesn't want to shoot. And so he's made some stupid passes here and there and forced some stupid things, and his shot's been off. But fortunately, this last game, it seems like somebody lit that fire back in him, and he's back to the Josh Hart we had and got last season in the trades. That's hugely important for us. Josh is such a good anchor to have as a team, a great locker room and even on-court presence and on the bench presence. He's just all around fantastic mentality player to have. Like, he really keeps people engaged. He can really light people up. So it's a huge thing. It's hugely important for us, especially considering he's kind of like an anchor for us defensively. Speaking of similarities, we have Jerami Grant. Jerami Grant, his entire career, has been known specifically as a defensive style player, and defensively oriented player. He's a good defender. I wouldn't say they call him necessarily a defensive specialist, but he's always considered a defensive first player. Of course, that's one of the reasons why he decided he wanted to leave Denver and go to Detroit, because what he wanted to do was prove he was actually a really capable and really good high-level scorer, including from just about everywhere. And he also wanted to develop it further, and he felt like he could lead a team better as a first or second option. So he was there for those 3 seasons, I believe it was. And then, of course, we traded for him this last offseason. Jerami Grant has had a career year here this year that is specifically offensively. His percentages have been up in career highs, including from 3. Consistency, therefore, has been high, the highest it's ever been in his career. His points per game are the highest it's ever been for a career. And you got to remember, Jerami Grant is technically our third option offensively, behind Damon Ant. And he's still managing, even when he's gone back down to little lulls like he has been fairly recently until these last 2 games. He was actually on a pretty long streak of being a little cold. Not icy like Dame, but cold. He heated up in these last 2 games, which is huge for him and hopefully for us, and hopefully he can sustain that, because he's an important third option. And if we need a fallback because Dame and or Ant are struggling massively, well, he's a great third option to switch to a second or third or first option when they are struggling. It leads us obviously over to that of Nurk, because Nurk is actually having a career year himself this year. Maybe not statistically, except of course from 3-point land. He's hit a career high amount of threes. He has a career high in 5 threes now in a game, which was fantastic to see. That was crazy. And then this last game versus the Mavs at home, the dude drilled nothing but net. He snapped the net from like 30 feet from the basket. He caught it and in rhythm shot that fucker and snapped the net from 30 feet. Dead straight on. That is insane. It's crazy how much he's developed this shot and his confidence in it this year. It's insane. And that's huge for him, and that's huge for this team, man. I love seeing that from him. But with Nurk, foul trouble, it's classic for centers, especially if his heavy-footedness and slowness. Obviously, you know, because of that more traditional movement and athleticism from him, he's going to be a lot more prone to fouling, especially in a more athletic game. Well, he has foul trouble issues. He needs to be able to defend better without fouling, because he has major foul trouble problems, obviously. He needs to be able to stay healthy longer, because he, kind of like CJ, seems to play average of 50 to 60 games a year because of injury issues. I'd like to see him be consistent in that department too and find some durability all around. That would be fantastic from him and for us. And then on top of that, he needs to develop a absolutely elite level of aggression and confidence. Not cockiness, obviously, because then he's just going to keep getting offensive fouls. But he needs to apply himself super strong, old school bully ball aggressive. Just hammer away in the paint. Because he is such a great player offensively in the paint. He's actually incredibly undervalued and underrated there. Why? Well, because the last few seasons, especially this season, he's all about finesse for some reason. So his percentages inside have gone way down. He's not the greatest offensively when it comes down to finesse play. He clearly believes he's a lot better there than he really is. That's clearly a fact. I hate to say it because I love Nurk. He's one of my main guys on this team. But he needs to get out of his ass. He needs to get out of his head. He's not that good with finesse situations. He does not need to put up the sissy stringy feathery thingies because those are inconsistent for him. He needs to go up aggressively. He needs to keep trying to dunk. He needs to try to power in and power down. No matter every opportunity he can get, he needs to do that. I like it that he needs to keep his finesse in his arsenal because obviously it serves purposes at certain situations and certain times. And it works for him in those situations. But to do it all the time like he keeps doing, it's not his game. He needs to go back to where he was in the year really we got him. And the year after that specifically, the year he busted his leg, he needs to go back to that level of play and that aggression, that confidence in the post. He needs to dominate there. For us to succeed, and for him to succeed, he needs to dominate in the post again. He needs to be hyper aggressive and strong as hell. Use that body of his to grizzle his way. You know, Bosnian bear, Bosnian beast. He needs to beast his way into feasting on the inside while maintaining that three-point shot, obviously, because that's huge. And then if he can develop a proper high post game and spot up mid-rangers, catch and shoots, you know, he's going to be an all-around player to absolutely just want to smash your head through a wall at, because he's going to show the world why old school basketball with just enough balance with modern day center basketball is going to be elite. All right, so now we got the bad late game rotations I want to talk about. And I feel like this is going to be such a divisive topic, just hearing that title in the first place or seeing it in the chapters of this video, because I think Chauncey has done a terrible job with our late game rotations. And I think it was especially blatant once we went into that massive slide. Not just that 5-game losing streak before these Mav games on the 14th, 15th, but I mean legitimately like the whole last 10 games before these Mavs games, and even a little bit beyond. Because when he was putting Keon in the game instead of Ant late game, specifically if he had him in the game from like the very ending of the third or from in between the very beginning of the fourth quarter to 8.5 minutes into the fourth quarter for the rest of the game, and we were behind, especially by double digits. If you had Keon in the game, not Ant, look at what that motherfucker did for us. The only times we ever made any kind of a comeback, Ant was on the bench, Keon was in his place on the court. I'm not gonna like act like, you know, Keon's this godsend or he's an elite level player already or whatever, but he is agonizingly underrated and underappreciated. In fact, if you think about it, he barely played any minutes or any games for the Slippers last year. Now with the Trailblazers, he played a fair amount of games last year and he did struggle. Summer League, he continued to be unfortunately actually very bad on both ends. But I think even preseason he struggled a bit. But once it got to the regular season, something happened. And you put him on the court in those situations, he was killing it. Single-handedly, even, on a few of those games. He literally helped us come back. He carried our defense, and he carried our offense. Then you put him out there, him and Drew for some reason. I have no idea why Drew Eubanks and Keon Johnson are, for some reason, team carry for us when we're behind late in the fourth. But they are. Whenever you look at those games, whenever they were specifically running both the defense and offense out there together, these guys carried us from double-digit deficits to close games. Then we would proceed to lose because he put back in Ant. Keon Johnson needs to be the guy we put in every single time we're down late in games. Not Ant, him. Ant shouldn't even be on the court in late game situations because he is such a horrific defender. He is a god-awful, agonizing defender. And, moreover for Ant, by the way, he is a bonehead, especially in those situations in the clutch. He is such an idiot offensively. He is way too much of an ISO hero ball type of guy. He is so tunnel visioned in those moments that he rarely makes a pass, including to open players. He just forces shots. Sometimes, there's been a few times where in the clutch, there's 3 wide open guys. He doesn't even look for them. He just forces a shit shot. And we lose the game. Mind you, that's alongside of his terrible defense. And mind you, the rare occasion he does decide to pass in those situations, they too are absolutely boneheaded decisions. They are terrible passes. Terrible passes in terrible situations that he himself, by himself, gets himself into. Ant is the worst possible player you could have in the clutch on your team. I am dead serious. It doesn't matter how good of an offensive player he is. He's way too much of a boneheaded dimwit, idiot tunnel vision freak, and incompetent defender in the clutch. I'd even suggest he's a bit of a lazy defender, especially late in games, because he's already played like 30 plus minutes. And then he just kind of gets lazy, especially in the clutch, because he's already tired. I mean, he's doing stupid shit in the offense, overdriving himself, and so he'll just foul somebody. It's like, dude, you're not helping. You already weren't helping. You're making it worse. It needs to be Keon. Keon is proving this season so far. He is infinitely superior in the clutch than Ant. Keon needs to start in the in the fourth in the situations. He needs to be when we're basically late game. We need better rotations and we need situational adjustments. And I hate the fact that Chauncey Billups refuses to put Keon in the games at all now. He is getting no minutes at all. And also one of my main guys on this team is Trendon Watford. I love that guy. Yes, I will die on the hill calling him Trendon the Tendon. I naturally give everybody some weird ass random nickname that comes off the top of my head, and I always stick with them. So Tendon became the thing. I'm sticking with it. The Tendon is not getting minutes either. And I know exactly why that is. It's because of the fact that Chauncey said, all right, well, we need to develop our other young guys too. Not just you, Trendon. So you get no more minutes. We're going to put you as an insurance policy player. And we're going to instead play Jabari Walker. Now, I love Jabari. He has the right attitude, I feel like. He has a good demeanor. He loves to have fun. And he is just generally, he has a great attitude. But he's already a pretty good player too. But I just hate to see my man not getting no minutes when he deserves it. He's proven he deserves it. He proved it last year. He proved it in Summer League. And he proves it this year so far. He needs those minutes. Especially considering Trendon has proven he needs a lot more minutes than Jabari does to get going on both ends. It took him quite a few games of getting proper minutes to find his shot from outside. He's never been the greatest three-point shooter. But if you follow along so far with his short career, he needs a good amount of minutes. He needs a lot of games under his belt before he finally figures out his shots again. I don't know why that is, but it takes him a long time. This season, he was just finally getting his feet under him and finally getting his shot from outside down when all of his minutes got revoked and got put on the bench. I hate that for him. That is so sad and so bad because he takes so much time in games to get there, and he was just arriving and trying to like, and now you get no minutes. Jabari, you take his minutes. He literally just swapped the minutes. And it's like, fuck, that's the worst timing. You know? It is. It's so bad. But he has struggled this year more than last year, I feel like, offensively. From everywhere, Trendon. He started the season, though, really struggling defensively. Holy shit. Trendon was having a really rough time defensively. He could not... He was, look, almost less mobile than Nurk, which is really scary to say. He was looking bad. Like, really bad defensively. But fortunately, he got his defense down a lot quicker than he did his offense, because I needed to see that from him. I think he needed to see that for himself, because of the fact that he is more of an offensive player than a defensive player. But you can tell that, unlike, say, Ant, Trendon wants to get better defensively. That's his thing. That's his gig. He wants to be a much better defender. And you can see it in his effort every time he's on the court. He's trying to figure out the defense. He's trying to figure out what he needs to do, his adjustments he needs to make. And he makes them. And he's trying his damnedest to practice and train defensively so he can be quicker in every way and thus have better reaction times and just generally be a better defender. And it's clearly working for him because he established his defense a lot quicker. It started absolutely god-awful. I felt so bad for him. But he figured it out. And so for the last, like, I'd say, I think it was 8 to 15 games, somewhere in that range, he actually was a net positive defender, and he was actually pretty dang good on both perimeter and post players. He did a great job defensively, and he was starting to get his rebounding game down to pat too. He was just really starting to get his feet under him. Then the minutes are yanked and swapped for Jabari. I get it. We have a lot of young guns. We want to develop them, especially if we're struggling. We might as well try out different rotations and give our different young guns more of a chance. I understand why Greg's getting no chance. I really do. Greg is a one-trick pony, but he's the worst kind. He's a dunker, and that's it. I don't even think that for a second any of the players in the roster, including Greg himself, would misunderstand why he's not getting minutes. I think he knows why. He's a one-trick pony. He only does that, and that's basically it. Yeah, he can rebound okay, but... So yeah, I think that Keon, though, he has such elite-level potential. Keon really does. He has such incredible potential. I think he could legitimately at least get to one of the best starters in the league, if given the proper chance and opportunity. He could even potentially end up becoming an all-star level player. I really believe that. He has that potential in him. I can see it. He has the right motor, the right mentality. He's an elite-level spark plug. He plays pretty intense but focused. He doesn't beat himself up too much, but he does get upset at himself when he fucks up. He gets a little irritated, you know, which is a great thing, great sign. His effort is through the roof on both ends. It really is. It's through the roof. He's a great listener to coaches and other players. You can tell that much. He takes their suggestions. But he's also not afraid to experiment and try a few things on his own as well, and see if they work. And if they do, he sticks with those instead. He has such good potential. He shows great IQ, good awareness. I think that, and he already shows great progress and growth if he's given the time, the minutes, and chance to do it. And he, unlike, say, Trendon, like I've mentioned before, he didn't take much time to get there. You got him a few games under his belt and a few more extra minutes, and all of a sudden, the guy was off the charts. He was killing in the clutch for us. Has elite level potential. He has incredible value, and I really just wish that he get his fucking flowers and he get his minutes permanently, like quality minutes, especially situationally, even if it is just situational minutes. But that brings me to my next thing, is our potential depth. This team has wicked potential in its depth, man. It's crazy. And I think that with Young-Hung Nas, Nasir Little coming back, I always call him Young-Hung Nas. And again, this guy had a femoral head. That's, you know, the ball joint of the hip. It literally got crushed in November. 2 months later, he's back. And he's playing at high levels. He looks like he hasn't been gone with that kind of an injury at all. One, only 2 months is insane. But two, to play at that level or in your return is crazy, dude. It's crazy. I love it. 2 blocks, a steal, 10 points, 50% from 3, 60% from the field. Oh, sorry, 50% from the field, 60% from 3. Crazy. Nas can be such a good player. I don't think he's starter quality yet. Could he develop there? Maybe. But he's just not a starter to me. He's really not. He's I don't know what he is, man. He's also a tweener technically because his size is 6'5", but technically he's a small forward, power forward in style of play. But his size dictates he's a small forward shooting guard. Can he develop to be that versatile and be able to play all three? Maybe, who knows? But, you know, it's crazy to think of our potential and our depth because Trendon has so much potential. He's already pretty damn good, especially for an undrafted guy. He's kind of crazy good. I love how he's developed, and he has so much more he can do. He has so much more great potential that I don't think a lot of people are seeing in him. He has that in him. I would love to see him develop into a great quality power forward. Nas has, like I said, that great potential to him. I don't know if he has as much potential as, say, Keon, but he has great potential. Then you have Keon. Keon has elite potential. I think he has the best potential of all of our young guys. Maybe, actually, no, I'd say best potential just underneath Shaden. Shaden has great potential. Shaden has the best potential. Keon has just under him second best potential. And I love what these guys can do already. Jabari has really good potential. He already shows good IQ and decent awareness, decent adaptability. I like that from him. He's already showing a lot more confidence now and a lot more ability in his game on both ends, which I'm great to, it's great to see him how you get a lot more comfortable out there. We just have great potential on this team in general, and that's already a lot of guys. Admittedly, that's literally all wings, 2 and 3 guards, mainly 3 guards. Well, Trendon's technically a 4, but his alt is definitely a 3. So it's, you know what I mean? It is a little awkward in that sense, but it's still great elite level potential. So if these guys can become even better and so much more consistent on both ends for us off the bench, I guarantee you, we will have the best fucking bench in the league, like the best rotation, the best depth. That's the word I'm looking for. We'd have the best depth in the league, or at least one of the deepest benches, deepest teams in the league by far. It's going to be insane, but we do lack the big men, and that's the key issue there. Actually, you lack proper playmakers too. We really lack playmakers. We lack centers or big men. Drew is our only true proper center, obviously, though he is 6'8", but he plays a lot bigger than he is. He's very underappreciated, underrated by just about everybody out there. I love watching Drew play. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's great on both ends, I think. And he's a good spark plug, especially off the bench. Again, especially with Keon, there's something between those two guys. I don't know what it is, as they're both spark plugs, but they seem to like elevate each other's ability to spark the team infinitely more. I don't know what the hell it is. And they elevate each other's games infinitely too, once they're on the floor together. Crazy. So then you have to account for that. And then Justice Winslow is very underrated and underappreciated, and nobody's giving him his flowers. But I'll tell you why that's a bad idea. Justice was a huge part of the rotation. He was an integral, imperative part of the rotation in those games. You know, those first 14 games where we went 10-4 to start the season. He was a massively key part of our rotation. He was a huge part of our success. That proves that, again, it's situational, but it proves the imperative nature of situational adjustments and rotations, but also how high quality and important even Justice Winslow is. And speaking of rotations in that depth, that is kind of scary. And it should be obvious to anybody why. But look at our game last night. Everybody's healthy now. Every single player on this team, even our two-way guys, entirely healthy, able to play. Fantastic news, right? The only one who was out with an injury was Justice Winslow. Oh, the injustice. What the fuck? Speaking of that potential depth we have as a team, what the fuck are we going to do with him? He's technically another wing, too. He's technically a point forward that can also play power forward for sure. But think about that, man. That's crazy to imagine. Our depth, when we're fully healthy and everybody individually and as a team collectively gets clicking on this team, how the fuck are we gonna run our rotations? Someone is gonna have to sacrifice a lot of minutes or all minutes, even though they clearly are good enough to consistently get minutes and are helping us. And that's scary to think about. It's also kind of bad too, because you do not want guys that are valuable to your rotation, that are helping you, and that are getting themselves on track to suddenly have little to no minutes in the rotation because we're just too deep. That really hyper-emphasizes how deep this team can get, how the potential of this team could make this team one of the deepest, if not the deepest in the entire league. And that is scary. It's not just scary for everyone else, it's scary for us for the literal opposite reasons it's scary for them, because of the rotation issue. What the hell are we going to do with Justice once he's back? And God forbid who's going to lose minutes, because that's crazy to think about. Now, penultimate, so next to last thing I wanted to speak about is the Jerami Grant situation. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, dude, what situation? There's no situation. The Jerami Grant situation is actually very simple, but it's, well, it's not one that anybody wants to admit is happening here, or that happened when we traded for him. We have him on a 1-year rental. We have him for this season only, because this is the last year of his contract. That's it. We only have him from this year. So technically, this is a roster experiment. And this already looks like it could be going wrong. Now, I'm not going to doomsday it, but I just want you to understand how sketchy this is. Because we have him for 1 year, on the final year of his contract. He's having career year, which every player does, especially if they really want an even bigger, juicier contract size than they had ever before. They're trying to prove they deserve it because they want that more than they want to stick with whatever team they're with. They want that more in their loyalty. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Jerami wouldn't take a pay cut or something, which I highly doubt he would. But even though this is his hometown team, technically, the thing is, it is a 1-year rental. And you got to remember, we have next to no cap space anyway. In fact, I don't even think we do have cap space this coming off season. If we do, it's for MLE. It's a mid-level exception. It's nothing like a Jerami Grant resigning. We don't have the money to resign him. Thus why he's a 1-year rental. So thus making this a technical roster experiment. We're trying to experiment to see, hey, adding him, maybe that can push us over the hump, and maybe we can become, I guess, a WCF contender? I'm guessing? Unless they're really delusional and thought that that could get us into an actual contender, as in championship contender, which is never going to happen with this roster. I'd love to be proven wrong, but again, I'd be living in La La Land if I thought that was possible. Nothing is impossible, but you're talking about like an infinitely near impossible chance of being contending that deep. And that's not a positive thing because, you know, again, you might be like, how is that possible? Well, we just re-signed Nurk to 80 million and we re-signed Ant to 100 million. That's $180 million right there. Then you have the rest of Dame's contract remaining, somewhere between the ballpark of 150 and 180 million dollars. So yeah, you're talking well over $300 million just for 3 players. Where are we going to get any money to re-sign Jerami Grant, especially after having a career year, even if he did take a pay cut? It's probably just about guaranteed. Jeremiah's already gone anyway this year. And I do believe that Josh Hart, Justice, both are going to be free agents this year as well, alongside of them. Now, we could re-sign them again to extensions. However, I'm just saying, that's still more money. Especially if Josh Hart really picks up his play this year after this last game. He's going to be owed more money than we'd want him to be. And that's going to make him a lot more expensive to have on the roster. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, and that's about it. I hope in editing that this will be under 40 minutes. Probably won't be. There is just a lot to talk about, I feel like, about this team. And again, I am 100% what I would consider a casual fan, despite droning on for it in reality, compared to what you'll see after editing, over an hour. An hour and 10 minutes plus, in fact. And that's with a list, keeping myself mostly on track. There's just a lot to go through and a lot to talk about this team. Probably just call this video the absolute state of the Portland Trailblazers. But that's the reality of our situation. And obviously, I encourage comments, including corrections if they're there. Like, again, if Jerami Grant happens to have a player option. And then obviously correction in terms of like, maybe we re-signed Justice because maybe he was on a 1-year contract. Maybe we signed him to more than a 1-year contract. Feel free to leave any corrections down below and let me know what you think about the current state of our team. Or even as a non-fan of the Blazers, just as a general fan of the NBA or of a specific team or of a rival like the Slacker. Just let me know what you think of our absolute state of the Portland Trailblazers in this video. From there, hope to see you around in whatever my next video may be. Again, normally I post gaming videos, but well, it's been a while, like a month plus since I did a commentary video, so we back. All right. Stay safe out there. Have a great internet wherever you are, and I hope to see you around.